Alright, today what I'm going to be doing is putting a new one-wire alternator on my 65 Impala. It's a Power Master alternator, and I'm putting a 12 SI. It's a 150 amp alternator. You can see there's one wire. Same thing that I put on my Cadillac. So far it's worked out great. I don't need 150 amps, but with a 150 amp alternator, I'll never have to worry about anything that I might want to add in the future. So I'm replacing the original factory alternator, and this one has never been replaced. This car sat for a lot of years, and the alternator really, I guess, didn't get a chance to wear out. I only maybe got 70,000 miles on it. The 12 SI alternator that I bought directly bolts into the original position. I'm gonna have to rearrange some wiring. I bought some new cables. You can see my positive battery cable. The original's black, but it's a pretty small wire too. But I bought some cables, and I also bought a terminal block that I'm gonna mount somewhere here, probably right here. So anything in the future that I want to add, I can add to it. Anyway, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to get started. I failed to mention the first thing we need to do is to disconnect the battery, and it is disconnected. I'm going to disconnect the wires off the back of the alternator also. Alright, so I've got my wires disconnected. Got the top bolt disconnected. Now I gotta disconnect the bottom bolt. Alright, so you can see the new alternator went on easily, mounted with no problems. And we're also going to put a ground on here while we're working on it. And I bought a ground cable. Everything I hear says it's good to have a good ground on here. I bought a ground cable, and I've also got some of the star washers. So it came with a warning saying that don't lose your alternator output, don't burn your belt, don't void your warranty. Place the socket on the pulley and pull the handle clockwise. If the pulley turns without turning the engine, the belt is too loose. So it needs to be tight enough to turn the engine. That's good to know. When we tighten it up, it's got to be tight enough to turn the engine. So right there, it would be too loose. So I'm gonna tighten up the other bolts that hold the alternator on. Make sure all of those are tight. All right, so now I'm turning the engine when I turn the pulley, just like it said. So that means my belt is tight enough. All right, so I happen to have a nut here that has the gnarls on the back of it that will be a good nut for grounding. It fits right on this stud that they supplied. And that's what I'm gonna use for this side. I'm gonna mount this right here. That way it clears the fan. So the other side I'll use one of the star washers. So I got that good and tight. The other side I'm gonna put the bolt that goes into the I'm going to put it on the bolt that holds the alternator bracket on to the exhaust manifold. From what I understand, it may work just fine without putting this extra ground on there, but they say it's very beneficial to have a good ground. So that's why we're going to take a little extra time to go ahead and put one of these cables. You can get these parts at the local auto parts store. And that cable that I got from the parts store was the perfect length. And it is a 12-inch cable. So it's worked perfectly for this ground. We don't have any extra cable that's in the way or anything. One of the good parts about getting rid of the original alternators, you're getting rid of that external voltage regulator. I've actually had a little bit of I had a failure on my air conditioning system, and I called and talked to their tech support, and they said that the old voltage regulators, the original styles, are not as consistent, so that caused a problem. It was with one of the damper door solenoids, and it can cause problems with different things when you don't have a consistent voltage. All right, so now I've got the ground. So now we're going to move on to the electrical portion, the positive portion of the electrical circuit. And I bought a long cable that can come off of the one wire stud here. It can come around and go all the way back over to here. And I'm going to mount this terminal block. And this is a Delphi style terminal block. I saw it on another guy's YouTube video. Chris Craft, I think. And I used it on the Cadillac and it worked well. But you see it has a stud in there. So basically, I'm going to run the power from the alternator over to this block, from this block up to the battery, and also from this block down to the starter. I'm going to run a new battery cable to the starter. That's all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna mount it somewhere here that's kind of out of the way. And in order to mount these, you gotta cut a slot, and I'm gonna cut it in the inner fender. And it's not really a big deal to me. I guess it depends on your car. To me, it's not a big deal to cut a slot there and mount that on the inner fender here. You gotta cut a slot and then drill a hole to make this side go in. My car's more functional than, I don't really treat it as a trailer queen, so it doesn't bother me to make little modifications like that. It can always be put back if you ever wanted to change the way you use it. I'm gonna have to get a different battery cable. The one I have is not long enough. So the one I have is 60 inches long, and that is not enough. So 5 feet is not enough. So to do this and run it somewhat similar to the factory, I would need probably 110 or 12 inches cable, and I may have to order one of those, or you could make one if you got the equipment to do the crimps. So 112 inches would be a good length to run from here back and under the front of the radiator support, so the wire's kind of hidden. So right now I'm going to run it temporary so I can get my car back running, but I will order me a cable like that. And I believe everything else I got is good. So temporarily I'm going to run it across there. I really don't like the way that looks at all. But I'm going to run it across there. Except I'm going to mount my terminal block here. I'm running me a new battery cable from my starter up to here. And I couldn't get a red one. The black one will work because my battery, the one that's actually hooked to my battery, is going to be red. And from the factory, they ran black to both sides. I just like to do red so nobody could accidentally jump it off the wrong way. Alright, so I've got the junction block mounted. Now I just got to connect the wires to it. I got to run the wire, I need to run the wire from the starter up to here. I had to go get a longer one. I needed a 54-inch wire from the starter. Looks like I got a 60-inch wire from the starter up to the block. So I've got to go under there and run it. In order to run it through all the hold downs and tie down straps that it has, that's how long I needed. Alright, so I've gotten all three of the main cables running to my junction box here. It's mounted. One's going to the battery, one's going to the starter, and one's going to the alternator. I got the alternator one temporarily ran right now. It will be changed and routed around the front. Alright, so now what I've got left to do is I bought me a new negative battery terminal that I'm going to connect. And I have got to address the wire into the voltage regulator. So this is the wire going from the battery terminal to the positive load on the firewall. It's going to stay on the positive load, but I'm going to connect it to the new battery cable that I've bought. So my old battery cable looks like it's a number 6. The new one's going to be a number 4. I've got the beefed up alternator, so I figured I might as well go up a size on the battery cable. This one looks excessively small to me. So on the new positive battery cable, it comes with the wire off of it. All I gotta do is cut this and strip it and crimp it to the new battery cable. So I'm gonna shorten it just a little bit, give it as much room as I've got there. So now I've got the original power load wire connected back to the battery cable. So now I've got to do the same thing basically with the negative battery cable. And the negative battery cable on these cars is attached to the exhaust manifold. So my cable looks like it's been repaired at some point in time, so now it's getting a brand new one. So the same deal, it just needs to be stripped back a little bit and connected to the new negative battery cable. And the new negative I got is I'm gonna route it the same way it was routed. Alright, so I got that nice and snug. So now I'm ready to crimp this is also a ground that goes to the chassis, but it goes to the front of the radiator support. There's several grounds that connect back to the ground on the battery. If you don't have good grounds all over you, it'll give you a lot of electrical problems. Things won't work. Alright, so now I've got all that back. Now the only thing I have to worry about is the wiring that came from the original alternator. It goes back to the voltage regulator. Alright, so this is after we got the alternator installed, the engine is running. The original wiring that came from the alternator basically can be eliminated from the harness. You can untape it. Right now I haven't completed it yet, but you got to unplug the 4-wire connector from the voltage regulator. And if you have a dummy light and you want it to work, you can buy, it says part number 150 from PowerMaster, and it's an adapter that you can make your dummy light work. So I got a voltmeter hooked to it right now, 13.5 volts. I grabbed the engine up. 14.50 volts. So the alternator is working. All right, so I got my longer battery cable. I had to order it. I ordered it from eBay. It comes from the alternator, comes over and goes around through the radiator support, all the way over to the terminal block. After I bought this, when I went to O'Reilly's, and they said that they have tools to make these. But anyway, I went ahead and bought this one. The one I ended up getting was 10 feet long. It fit with a little bit of extra room. Probably could have went with a 9 feet long one. Anyway, so the original wiring, if you really wanted to clean this up, you could untape all this. It goes back to the voltage regulator. You could untape it, remove all the wires, and it would clean it up a little bit. I may do that later. Right now, I'm not planning on doing it. So I've completed this. Everything's working great on it. Please like and subscribe for more videos. I'll be making some more videos on the 65 Impala. I'll also be making some videos on the 67 Cadillac. I may make some videos. My brother has a 66 Caprice. You've already seen a couple videos like that. And then my other brother recently bought a 66 Chevelle, and we may make some videos on that eventually. So like I said, please like and subscribe. I appreciate it.